Hi everyone, this is Building Bytes. These episodes are excerpts from the Building Knowledge Base, available at info.building.inc. In these monologues, I will read research articles and thought leadership that we've published. If you learn something new, please consider following and leaving a positive review. Enjoy! Core Concepts 1, Foundations of Asset Legibility, Section 2, From Documents to Assets. Structured, verifiable information transforms static files into assets that can be evaluated, trusted, and transacted. Overview. From Documents to Assets describes the transition from treating information as static files to treating it as an active component of asset value. In real estate, documents are abundant. Floor plans, permits, construction specifications, lease agreements, maintenance records, inspection reports. The volume accumulates across an asset's lifecycle. Yet, despite this abundance, usable and trusted information remains scarce. The difference lies not in volume, but in structure, context, and verification. An asset becomes finance-ready, not when documents exist, but when information behaves like an asset itself, persistent, structured, and capable of generating confidence without repeated investigation. This transformation is what separates assets that can readily access capital from those that remain informationally opaque despite physical quality. Why documents don't scale trust. Documents were designed for human review, not system-level reuse. A building permit serves its purpose at the moment of approval. A construction drawing communicates intent to contractors. A compliance certificate satisfies a regulatory requirement. Each document fulfills a specific function at a specific time for a specific audience. The problem emerges when these same documents must serve new purposes later. When an asset is refinanced, audited, sold, insured, or tokenized, stakeholders must reread, recheck, and recontextualize materials that were never designed for reuse in different contexts. A lender reviewing a refinancing application examines the same construction records that a previous lender reviewed years earlier. An auditor verifies compliance using the same certificates that were verified during initial occupancy. Trust does not compound across these interactions. It resets with each new stakeholder. This creates a paradox. The more valuable an asset becomes, the more effort is required to explain it. High-value assets attract more scrutiny, more complex financing structures, and more demanding diligence requirements. Yet the information infrastructure supporting these assets often remains unchanged. Collections of documents optimized for initial delivery, not ongoing trust. Assets require structure, not just storage. Information begins to function like an asset when it gains four essential characteristics. First, structure. Predictable formats and metadata that allows systems to interpret content without human translation. Second, context. Clarity about purpose, timing, and scope so that information can be understood in relation to other information. Third, provenance. Traceability to source and version, establishing a chain of custody that supports verification. Fourth, verifiability. The ability to confirm integrity without reinterpretation or reliance on intermediaries who may no longer be accessible. When information possesses these characteristics, it is no longer passive. It can be referenced by multiple systems simultaneously. It can be compared against standards or benchmarks programmatically. It can be validated without requiring stakeholders to reconstruct context from scratch. It can be reused confidently because its reliability is built into its structure, not dependent on the memory or availability of individuals who created it. This is the moment documents stop being files and start becoming infrastructure. The shift is not about technology platforms or file formats. Those are implementation details. The shift is conceptual, recognizing that information, like physical infrastructure, must be designed to support ongoing operations rather than satisfy momentary requirements. Asset behavior changes when information changes. When information is treated as an asset rather than a collection of documents, the behavior of the underlying physical asset changes in measurable ways. Due diligence shifts from discovery to confirmation. Instead of investigating what exists, stakeholders verify what has already been documented. Timelines compress because fewer unknowns require resolution. Costs decline because less specialized expertise is needed to reconstruct context. Audits become validation exercises rather than investigations. An audit of a well-documented asset confirms that systems and processes match their documented state. An audit of a poorly documented asset must first establish what the state is before validation can begin. The former is routine, the latter is forensic. Valuation assumptions become defensible rather than inferred. Appraisers working from structured, verified information can justify their conclusions with reference to specific, traceable data points. Appraisers working from incomplete documentation must rely more heavily on comparable properties, market trends, or assumptions that may not accurately reflect the asset's specific characteristics. The result is wider confidence intervals and more conservative valuations. Transactions accelerate because uncertainty is reduced. Buyers can move from letter of intent to closing more quickly when asset information is readily available and trustworthy. Sellers avoid extended negotiations over contingencies that exist primarily to protect buyers from information risk. Lenders underwrite faster when they can rely on existing documentation rather than commissioning new studies. The physical asset hasn't changed, its informational surface has. Yet that informational transformation enables behaviors that were structurally difficult or impossible when information remained documentary. Documents describe assets, asset data enables action. There is a fundamental difference between description and enablement. Documents describe what happened. A certificate of occupancy describes that a building met code requirements at a point in time. A construction change order describes a modification to its original plans. A lease agreement describes the terms under which a tenant occupies space. Asset data enables what can happen next. It supports automated checks that flag inconsistency or missing requirements. It powers readiness scoring that quantifies an asset's preparedness for specific transactions or financing structures. It enables compliance validation that confirms adherence to evolving standards without manual review. It facilitates integration with financial or operational systems that depend on reliable inputs. These capabilities require information that is structured and trusted, not merely available. A scanned PDF of a compliance certificate is available but not structured. A system cannot extract meaning from it without optical character recognition and natural language processing, both of which introduce error. A database entry stating "compliant as of this date" is structured but may not be trusted if its provenance is unclear or its verification process is undocumented. The transition from documents to assets is the transition from description to enablement. It is the difference between having records of the past and having infrastructure that supports future decisions. Why this matters for finance and liquidity. Markets reward clarity. Assets with well-structured, verifiable information carry lower perceived risk because fewer questions remain unanswered. They support tighter underwriting assumptions because lenders can rely on data rather than apply conservative buffers to compensate for uncertainty. They move through transactions faster because due diligence requires less time to complete. They retain optionality across financing structures because information can be reorganized to meet different requirements without starting from scratch. Liquidity is not unlocked by tokenization alone. Representing an asset on a blockchain does not make it liquid if buyers cannot confidently assess what they are purchasing. Liquidity emerges when information asymmetry is minimized, when buyers and sellers operate from the same informational foundation, reducing the risk premium associated with hidden problems or unknown conditions. Moving from documents to assets is a prerequisite, not a consequence of liquidity. Tokenization, securitization, and access to capital markets all depend on the prior condition that assets can explain themselves credibly. Without that foundation, these mechanisms operate on top of uncertainty, limiting their effectiveness and adoption. This is not about replacing documents. Documents still matter. Contracts remain legally binding. Reports satisfy regulatory requirements. Certifications demonstrate compliance with standards. The shift from documents to assets does not eliminate these artifacts or reduce their importance. What changes is what sits above them. Documents become evidence within a larger system rather than standalone products. They support continuity by contributing to a structured, verifiable record rather than existing in isolation. The system provides context, explaining how documents relate to one another, what they establish, and why they were created. Structure enables trust at scale, allowing multiple stakeholders to rely on the same information without redundant verification. Documents are preserved, but they are no longer asked to do work they were never designed to do. They no longer bear sole responsibility for establishing trust, communicating context, or enabling reuse across different systems and stakeholders. That work is done by the information architecture within which documents reside. Why this concept matters. This concept explains why many digital transformation initiatives in real estate stall despite significant investment. Scanning files into cloud storage does not change asset behavior. Organizing folders by project or date does not create structure that systems can use. Building portals that allow stakeholders to access documents does not establish verification or provenance. These are incremental improvements, better than paper filing cabinets, certainly, but they do not fundamentally alter how information functions. Assets remain document dependent. Trust still resets with each new stakeholder. Diligence still requires extensive manual review. Transactions still proceed slowly because uncertainty persists. Only when information itself is treated as a durable, structured asset, designed for persistence and reuse, equipped with provenance and verification, does the real estate asset become easier to finance, operate, and transfer. The future of real estate is not fewer documents. It is better assets, built on better information, capable of explaining themselves with confidence across their entire life cycle.